Jake Carter was checking the cargo seals on his ship when the alarm started screaming. He grabbed his pistol from the workbench and moved toward the loading bay. The doors were still locked from the inside, but something was there. Something big. The scanner showed a single life form, but the readings made no sense. Whatever it was had just appeared out of nowhere, like it had walked through the walls. Jake hit the door release and raised his weapon. Standing in his cargo bay was a woman. At least she looked like a woman. She was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. Her eyes were large and dark and filled with something Jake recognized even across species. Fear, desperation, the kind of look a mother gets when her children are in danger. She raised her hands slowly and spoke. The words came through his ship's computer in perfect English. "Please take me prisoner. I surrender myself to humanity. I beg you." Jake kept his gun steady, but he did not fire. "Lady, you got the wrong ship. I haul freight, not prisoners. You want the military base 3 systems over." "No." Her voice cracked. "They will kill me on sight. I have no time. My children will die if I do not return with a human captive. Please. I know what I am asking. I know it sounds insane. But I have studied your people. You are different from us. You have something we call mercy." Jake lowered his gun a fraction. "Who has your kids? The hierarchy. My government. They sent me to capture a human to prove that your kind can be defeated. If I return without one, they will execute my children. They are hostages to ensure my loyalty." Her hands trembled. "I thought perhaps one human might help me deceive them. Just long enough for me to get my children back." The silence stretched between them. Jake had been in tight spots before. He had run blockades and dodged pirates and once even outrun a solar flare. But this was different. This was not about cargo or credits or even his own skin. This was about someone's kids. He holstered his weapon. Against every bit of common sense he had, he holstered his weapon and gestured to the table in the corner. "Sit down, tell me everything." Relief washed over her face. She moved to the table and sat. Her movements were graceful but exhausted. "My name is Lyra. I am a xenobiologist. My children are named Kes and Mara. They are young. So young." She looked at her hands. "The hierarchy is afraid of humanity. Your people appeared in our galaxy only 40 years ago, and you have already changed everything. You do not follow the old rules. You question everything. You create and improvise and refuse to accept that some things are impossible." Jake poured 2 cups of coffee. "One for him and one for her. So they want to prove we are not special, that we can be captured like anyone else. Yes. They gave me this mission because I was the only one who argued for peaceful contact with humans. I said you should be studied and understood, not feared. They gave me one chance to prove my theory or condemn my family." She took the cup but did not drink. "I will not let my children die for their paranoia." Jake sat across from her. "So we fake it. I pretend to be your prisoner. You take me to your people. Show me off. Get your kids back. Then what? Then I betray everything I have ever known to save them and you." Her eyes met his. "I'm asking you to trust an alien you just met. I am asking you to walk into enemy territory with nothing but my word that I will get you out. I have no right to ask this." Jake took a long drink of his coffee. It was terrible, like always, but it helped him think. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his sister and her kids. He thought about what he would do if someone held them hostage. He already knew the answer. How long do we have? 3 days to reach the border. Then another day to the central station where the council meets. She pulled a small device from her clothing. "These are restraints. They look real, but I can release them with a touch. You will need to act defeated but not broken. They must believe you are a prize but not a threat." Jake took the restraints and examined them. They were light but strong. He could probably break them if he had to, but it would take time. "Ma'am, I have been underestimated my whole life. I think I can play the part. There is something else you should know." Lyra's voice dropped. "If they discover the deception, they will kill us both." Slowly. "The hierarchy does not forgive betrayal." Noted. Jake stood and moved to the pilot station. "We better get moving then. Strap in. The jump to your space is going to be rough." Lyra followed him. "Why are you doing this? You do not know me. You owe me nothing." Jake started the pre-flight sequence. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. "Because someone's kids are in trouble. That is all the reason I need." As the ship's engines came to life, Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat. She watched Jake work, watched how he moved with confidence even facing the unknown. This human was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was just a freight hauler who wore an old leather jacket and called himself a cowboy. But he had agreed to risk everything for strangers. Perhaps she had been right about humanity after all. Perhaps they were different, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they carried something the hierarchy had lost long ago, the willingness to help even when it made no sense, even when it was dangerous, even when there was nothing to gain. The ship lifted off and turned toward the stars, toward hierarchy space, toward danger and uncertainty. Jake set the navigation computer and leaned back. 3 days, huh? Better get some rest. You look like you have not slept in a week. I have not. Not since they took Kes and Mara. Well, you can sleep now. I got the watch. Jake looked at her. We are going to get your kids back. That is a promise. Lyra felt something strange. Hope. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Thank you, Jake Carter. Do not thank me yet. Let us see if we survive this first. The ship jumped to faster than light speed and the stars stretched into lines. Behind them lay human space and safety. Ahead lay the unknown. But for now, in this moment, they had a plan and a chance. Sometimes that was enough. The first 2 days passed intense preparation. Jake's ship called the Prairie Rose was not designed for stealth or combat. It was a working vessel with more repair patches than original hull. But it was fast and Jake knew every inch of it. He had flown it for 12 years through storms and battles and once even through the tail of a comet. Lyra spent the time teaching Jake everything he needed to know. The hierarchy was not one species but 7. Each race had joined the coalition thousands of years ago. They were ancient and powerful and set in their ways. Change frightened them. Chaos terrified them. And humanity represented both. You must understand. Lyra sat across from Jake in the small galley. Her hands wrapped around another cup of that terrible coffee. The hierarchy has existed for 10,000 years. In all that time, they have encountered 47 different species. All of them followed the same pattern. First contact, cultural exchange, integration into the hierarchy. Everyone follows the rules, and then we showed up. Jake was cleaning his pistol. The familiar motions helped him think, and then humans showed up. Lyra nodded. You did not follow the pattern. You did not wait for permission to explore. You did not accept our technology as superior. You looked at our rules and asked why. The worst part for them is that you are successful. Human colonies thrive. Human trade flourishes. You accomplish in decades what takes other species centuries. We just do not know any better. Jake reassembled the gun. We see a problem and we fix it. We see something impossible and we try anyway. That is just how we are built, I know. That is why I believed contact could be peaceful. But the Council sees only threat. They believe if they can break one human, it will prove you are not special. That fear can control you like it controls the rest of us. Jake holstered the weapon. They are going to be disappointed. On the 3rd day, they reached the border. Lyra guided them to a checkpoint station. It was massive, a construct of metal and crystal that gleamed in the light of a nearby star. Ships of every design moved in carefully controlled patterns. Everything was ordered. Everything was precise, remember? Lyra handed Jake the restraints. Act defeated but aware. Do not speak unless spoken to. Keep your eyes down but not closed. Show them you are beaten but not broken. Jake clicked the restraints on his wrists. They felt lighter than they looked. How do I get out of these if things go bad? Press both locks at the same time and twist left. But Jake, if things go that bad, we are already dead. The station has enough firepower to destroy a fleet. Then I guess we better sell this. Jake took a breath and let his shoulders slump. He let his expression go blank. When he looked up again, Lyra barely recognized him. The confident pilot was gone. In his place was a man who looked beaten, tired, defeated. That is perfect. Stay exactly like that. The Prairie Rose docked without incident. Lyra transmitted her credentials and false mission reports. She had spent months preparing these documents. Every detail was perfect. Every lie was layered with enough truth to be believable. She had captured a human scout on the edge of neutral space. She had used superior technology and surprise. The human had never stood a chance. Security officers boarded the ship. They were Kryn, tall insectoid beings with too many limbs and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not imagine. They moved around Jake in a circle, studying him, analyzing him. This is human. One of them clicked in their native language. Jake's translator chip picked it up a moment later. Small, weak-looking. Are we certain these creatures are the threat the council fears? Appearances deceive. Another Kryn moved closer to Jake. It reached out with one bladed limb and lifted his chin. Jake kept his eyes unfocused. Do not underestimate them. That is exactly what they want. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was cold and professional. The prisoner has been scanned and secured. All biological weapons have been neutralized. I request permission to transport him to the central station for council presentation. The senior Kryn officer studied the documents on his datapad. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Everything appears in order. But we will escort you. Standard protocol for dangerous cargo. Of course. Lyra nodded. I would expect nothing less. They transferred Jake to a security transport. It was cramped and dark. Guards flanked him on both sides. Their weapons were drawn and ready. Jake kept up his act. He shuffled when he walked. He kept his head down. He looked at the floor like a man who had given up hope. But inside his mind was racing. He counted guards. 6 in the transport, probably 20 more on the station. He noted exits. 2 main doors, 3 emergency hatches. He memorized the layout from the brief glimpse he had gotten during boarding. If this went wrong, he would need every advantage. The journey to the central station took 18 hours. They did not let Jake sleep. They did not feed him. It was part of the show, part of making him look defeated. Lyra had warned him this would happen, but knowing and experiencing were different things. When they finally arrived, Jake was genuinely exhausted. That actually helped the disguise. He stumbled, getting off the transport. A guard caught him roughly and shoved him forward. Jake did not resist. He just moved where they pushed him. The central station was like nothing Jake had ever seen. It was a city in space. Massive towers reached toward the central hub. Ships moved between them like insects around a hive. The architecture was beautiful and alien. Everything curved and flowed. There were no straight lines, no sharp angles. Everything was organic and ancient. They took him to a holding area deep in the station. The cell was small but clean. There was a bench and a waste facility and nothing else. They removed his restraints and left him there. A force field hummed across the entrance. Through it, Jake could see Lyra talking to the guards. She looked back at him once. Their eyes met for just a moment. In that moment, Jake saw the fear she was hiding. This was really happening. They were deep in enemy territory. One mistake and they would both die. Her children would die. Everything depended on this insane plan working. Jake sat on the bench and waited. He had learned patience in his years running freight. Sometimes the best thing you could do was wait, watch, learn. So he watched the guards change shifts. He watched the patrol patterns. He listened to the sounds of the station. All of it was information. All of it might be useful. Hours passed. Then a day. Jake measured time by the shift changes. Finally, Lyra returned. She was escorted by a different set of guards. These were not Kryn. They were something else, tall and thin with skin like polished stone. Their eyes glowed with internal light. The council will see you tomorrow. Lyra's voice was formal, distant, but her hands moved in small gestures, the signals they had agreed on. Everything was going according to plan. The council believed the lie. Tomorrow, Jake would be presented as proof that humans could be captured, that they were not invincible, and tomorrow Lyra would demand her children be returned. That was the deal. Show them a human prisoner and get her family back. Then they just had to escape from a fortress station in the heart of hierarchy, space with 2 children and every security force in the sector looking for them. Simple. Jake almost smiled at the thought, but caught himself. He was supposed to be defeated. So he just nodded and looked at the floor. Lyra turned and left. The guards followed. The force field hummed back into place. Jake lay down on the bench and closed his eyes. He needed rest. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow they would either succeed or die trying. But tonight he could rest. Tonight he was just a prisoner in a cell. A human who had been caught, defeated, broken. Except Jake Carter had never been broken in his life, and he was not about to start now. They came for Jake before dawn. Not that there was a real dawn on the station, but the lights had been dimmed to simulate night. The guards were different this time. Elite soldiers in armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. They did not speak. They simply gestured for Jake to move. He shuffled forward, keeping his head down. The restraints were back on his wrists. These were real ones, heavy and cold. They bit into his skin and limited his movement to just a few inches. Lyra had not been able to swap them out. That meant if things went wrong, Jake would be fighting with his hands bound. The corridor leading to the council chamber was long and lined with guards. Every species of the hierarchy was represented. Kryn with their bladed limbs, the stone-skinned Vakri with glowing eyes, small floating creatures that looked like jellyfish made of light, massive armored beings that stood 10 feet tall. All of them watched Jake pass. All of them looked at him with contempt or curiosity or fear. The council chamber itself was enormous. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet above. The walls were covered in displays showing data and images from across hierarchy space. At the center was a raised platform where 7 figures sat. Each one represented a different species. Each one radiated power and age. Jake was brought to stand in the center of the room. Spotlights illuminated him from above. He could barely see the council through the glare, but he could feel their attention like a physical weight. This was the moment. This was what everything had been building toward. Lyra stood to one side. She wore formal robes now. Her expression was neutral, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. Somewhere in this massive station, her children were being held, somewhere close. That was the only reason she was going through with this. Council member Vex spoke first. Its voice resonated through the chamber. The translation came a moment later. This is the human you captured, the creature that has caused such disruption to our order. Yes, honored council. Lyra stepped forward. I present this human as evidence that they are not the unstoppable force some fear. They can be captured. They can be controlled. Vex's crystalline body refracted the light into rainbow patterns. One human proves nothing. There are billions of them. This could be an aberration, a weak specimen. Another council member leaned forward. This one was Kryn. Its mandibles clicked rapidly. We should dissect it, study its biology, learn what makes these creatures so adaptive. No. A third voice, soft but firm. The speaker was small, barely visible among the larger council members. We gave Lyra this mission to prove her theory that humans could be reasoned with, captured peacefully. If we kill this one, we learn nothing of value. Vex seemed to consider this. Very well. We will conduct an examination. Not physical, but psychological. We will learn how humans think. What drives them? What breaks them? Lyra, you will conduct this examination. You will have 3 days to provide us with actionable intelligence. Information we can use to manage the human expansion into our territories. 3 days. Lyra bowed. That is acceptable. But my children, you promised their release upon successful completion of my mission. I have brought you a human prisoner as requested. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt the atmosphere shift. Something was wrong. He saw Lyra's hands clench into fists, saw the way her shoulders tightened. Your mission is not complete. Vex's voice was cold. You have brought us a prisoner, yes, but you have not provided useful intelligence. Your children will be released when you fulfill your entire assignment. Not before. That was not the agreement. Lyra's voice rose. You said if I captured a human, my family would be freed. I have done exactly that. We said nothing of the kind. Another council member spoke. A Vakri with skin like obsidian. Check your orders. You were to capture a human and extract intelligence of military value. You have completed only the first part. Jake saw Lyra's composure crack. She had been set up. The hierarchy had never intended to return her children. They were leverage, insurance that she would continue to cooperate. He felt anger rising in his chest. These ancient beings with all their power and wisdom were using a mother's love to manipulate her. I will need access to proper facilities. Lyra's voice shook. Interrogation equipment, medical scanners. Time alone with the prisoner granted? Vex gestured. You will have everything you require. But be aware, we will be monitoring your progress. If we determine you are being too gentle or if the human is not cooperating fully, we will take other measures. What measures? Your children are quite young, are they not? 8 and 6 by human years. So fragile at that age. Vex's words were measured. Cruel. It would be unfortunate if harm came to them due to your failure. Jake saw red. He forgot the plan. Forgot the act. His head snapped up and he glared at Vex with undisguised hatred. You leave those kids alone. You want someone to threaten, then threaten me. But you leave those children out of this. The chamber erupted. Guards rushed forward. Several council members stood in alarm. Vex's crystalline form brightened dangerously. The human speaks. Vex's voice cut through the chaos. And with such fire, perhaps there is more to study here than we thought. Tell me, creature, why should we listen to anything you say? You are a prisoner. You have no power here. Jake forced himself to calm down. He had blown his cover, but maybe he could salvage this. Because I am not the one you should be afraid of. Threatening kids. Using families as hostages. That is not strength. That is fear. And you know what humans do when they are afraid? What? We get angry. Jake met Vex's gaze. And when humans get angry, we stop thinking about what is smart or safe. We start thinking about payback empty threats. Vex settled back. You are one human. Alone, unarmed. In the heart of our stronghold. What can you possibly do? Nothing. Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. But I have got about 10,000 friends back home who are going to be real interested to hear about this. About how the great hierarchy takes children hostage. Real good PR. The council chamber fell silent again. Jake had touched on something. The hierarchy feared human expansion, not just because of military power, but because of human influence. Other species were watching, seeing how humans approached problems, seeing the results they achieved. If word got out that the hierarchy used children as hostages, it would undermine everything they stood for. Enough. Vex's voice cracked like breaking ice. Lyra, take your prisoner to the interrogation facility. You have 3 days. We will check your progress daily. If you fail, then both you and this human will witness consequences. The guards moved in. They grabbed Jake roughly and hauled him toward a side exit. He looked back and caught Lyra's eye. She looked terrified. But underneath the fear, he saw something else. Determination. She had 2 children counting on her. Nothing else mattered. They took Jake to a different part of the station. The interrogation facility was cold and sterile. White walls, bright lights, examination tables with restraints. All the tools needed to break someone's will. They strapped Jake down and left him there. Minutes later, Lyra entered alone. The door sealed behind her. She moved to the control panel and activated something. A faint shimmer appeared around them. Privacy field. She whispered. It will blur the surveillance. They can see we are working but not hear clearly or see details. We have maybe 10 minutes before they notice. Your kids. Jake strained against the restraints. Lyra, please tell me you know where they are. Level 7. Detention block 6. She was shaking. They showed me briefly. To motivate me. Kes was crying. Mara was trying to be brave, but she is so small, Jake. They are so small and they are in a cell and this is all my fault. Hey. Jake's voice was firm. This is not your fault. This is on them. On these council members who think they can use kids as leverage. But we are going to fix this. We are going to get them out. How? Lyra looked at him with desperate eyes. This station is a fortress. Even if we could reach them, we would never make it off station. There are 300 ships in the defense fleet. Thousands of soldiers, Jake thought fast. Then we do not fight our way out. We sneak out. And to do that, we need chaos, confusion, something to make everyone look the wrong way while we grab your kids and run. What kind of chaos? Jake smiled. The kind humans are really good at making. Over the next 2 days, Lyra conducted what appeared to be a thorough interrogation. The council monitored everything through surveillance systems that covered every angle of the room. They watched as she connected neural scanners to Jake's head. They observed as she ran psychological tests. They saw what they expected to see. A scientist extracting information from a captured human. What they did not see was the real conversation happening beneath the surface. Lyra had been clever. She routed the neural scanners through her own equipment. The readings the council received were fabricated. Carefully constructed data that told them what they wanted to hear while hiding what was really happening. Tell me about Earth. Lyra spoke clearly for the surveillance. Describe your homeworld's defensive capabilities. Jake played along. Earth has got maybe 300 orbital defense platforms, another 500 ships in the home fleet. It sounds like a lot, but it is spread thin, real thin. We are expanding faster than we can protect. The council would hear that and feel reassured. Humanity was overextended, vulnerable. But while Jake spoke those words, his hands moved in small gestures. Sign language Lyra had taught him. The real message was different. Can you access station systems from here? Lyra's hands replied while her mouth asked about human manufacturing capacity. Limited access, yes. I can reach environmental controls. Emergency systems, wide fire suppression. If we trigger it station-wide, what happens? Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she kept her voice steady as she questioned Jake about military protocols. Every section seals automatically. It is a safety measure. The system assumes hull breach or toxic contamination. Everything locks down until the all-clear is given. How long does that take? Depends on the size of the affected area. For the whole station, maybe 30 minutes. Maybe more. The system has to verify each section individually. Her hands moved faster. You want to use the lockdown to reach my children? Jake nodded almost imperceptibly. And to cause enough confusion that nobody notices a small ship leaving, can you override the detention block seals? If I am physically there, yes. My credentials should work even during lockdown. But Jake, getting from here to there means crossing half the station, through sealed doors, past security checkpoints. Then we better move fast when it starts. Jake's voice remained flat and defeated for the surveillance. And yeah, we got weapons. Lots of them. But most of our fleet is old. Repurposed civilian ships. We are still learning how to fight in space. More reassurance for the Council. Humanity was armed but inexperienced. Easy to counter. But Jake's hands kept signing. When do we do this? Tonight. Third shift. Skeleton crew on duty. Most of the Council will be in rest cycle. Lyra's professional questioning continued. What about your encryption? How secure are human communications? Not very. We change codes, but your people could probably crack them in a few hours. Jake was giving the Council exactly what they wanted. A picture of humanity as strong but flawed, powerful but predictable. And while he spoke, he was memorizing the station layout Lyra had shown him. The route from interrogation to detention block 7. 17 corridors, 8 junctions, 4 security checkpoints. On the second evening, Vex visited the interrogation room. The Council member's crystalline form seemed to pulse with satisfaction. You are making progress. The human's psychological profile shows standard fear responses. He is concerned for his species, for his homeworld. This is useful. Lyra bowed respectfully. The data suggests humans form strong emotional attachments to family and location. This can be exploited. They will fight harder to defend their territory, but they can also be manipulated through threats to their loved ones. Interesting. Vex, move closer to Jake. So human, if we threatened your homeworld, you would surrender. You would give us what we want. Jake had to fight to keep the hatred out of his eyes. He was supposed to be defeated. Cooperative. I would do whatever it took to keep my family safe, just like anyone would, exactly like anyone. Vex seemed pleased. You are not special. You are simply louder, more chaotic, but ultimately no different from any other species. Fear motivates you. Love controls you. These are things we understand. After Vex left, Lyra slumped against the wall. Her hands were shaking. They will never return, Kes and Mara. She signed the words. Even if I give them everything they want. I see that now. They will always want more, always demand more. My children are leverage, they will never surrender. Jake's jaw tightened. Then we take them, tonight. No more waiting. No more playing their game. If we fail, they will kill us all. If we do nothing, they will keep your kids forever. Use them to control you. Make you do worse things. Jake met her eyes. I have got a sister back on Earth. She has got 3 kids. If someone took them and used them against her, I would burn down the whole damn galaxy to get them back. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to burn this place down and walk out with your children. Lyra nodded slowly. Then we do it tonight. I will trigger the fire suppression system at midnight station time. That gives us maybe 40 minutes before they restore control. 40 minutes to reach detention block 7. Get Kes and Mara, and make it back to your ship. 40 minutes. Jake smiled grimly. I have done crazier things in less time. That night they prepared. Lyra disabled the restraints on the examination table using her medical codes. She downloaded station maps to a portable device. She gathered supplies, a medical kit, emergency rations, a small plasma cutter disguised as a surgical tool. Jake exercised, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. His body was stiff from days of confinement, but adrenaline would carry him through. He visualized the route, memorized every turn, every checkpoint, every possible obstacle. At 11:45, Lyra sat at the control console. Her fingers hovered over the commands. "This is treason," she whispered. "Once I do this, there is no going back. The hierarchy will hunt me forever." "Good thing you will be in human space then." Jake stood beside her. "We protect our own. That includes people who help us. You get us out of here and I promise you will have a home. You and your kids safe, free, no more hostages. No more threats." Lyra looked at him, studied his face, saw the sincerity there. Humans were strange, chaotic, unpredictable, but they were also loyal, fiercely protective. They did not abandon their own. She had studied them for years, had read their history, knew their wars and their sacrifices. If Jake Carter promised protection, he meant it. At midnight, she pressed the button. Alarms began to scream throughout the station. Every warning system activated at once. Fire suppression protocols engaged in all sections simultaneously. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Lights shifted to emergency red. The entire massive station went into lockdown in seconds. Chaos erupted immediately. Security forces scrambled. Officers shouted conflicting orders. The system was designed to handle localized emergencies, not station-wide events. Every safety protocol was fighting for priority. It was beautiful pandemonium. Jake and Lyra ran. They hit the first sealed bulkhead, and Lyra used her codes to override it. The door ground open reluctantly. They squeezed through and kept moving. Behind them, alarms echoed. Ahead lay 17 corridors and 2 children who needed their mother. They passed the first checkpoint. The guards were confused, trying to coordinate with Central Command, trying to understand why every single section was reporting fire suppression activation. Lyra walked past them with Jake following. She held up her credentials. Medical emergency. Prisoner showing toxic reaction. Need to reach quarantine. The guards barely looked. They waved her through. There were bigger problems right now. The whole station was going crazy. Second checkpoint, third. Each time Lyra had a reason. Each time the guards were too overwhelmed to question her. Jake kept his head down, played the sick prisoner, let Lyra do the talking. They reached level 7 12 minutes into the chaos. Detention block 6 was ahead. Between them and the children were 50 feet of corridor and one final checkpoint. 2 guards stood at the entrance. These guards were not distracted. They had orders. Nobody in or out during lockdown. Lyra approached confidently. "I need access." Council orders. The human prisoner requires immediate medical attention, and this is the closest secure facility. The guards exchanged looks. "Lady, the whole station is going crazy. We are not opening this door for anyone." Jake made his move. He stumbled forward, clutched his chest, gasped like he could not breathe. The guard stepped back instinctively. Whatever was wrong with the human, they did not want to catch it. Lyra pulled out her medical scanner. "He is having an allergic reaction, possibly to the fire suppression chemicals. If he dies on your watch, the council will have questions." The guards hesitated. That hesitation was all Jake needed. He lunged forward, not at the guards but at the door controls. His hand slapped the panel. The access code Lyra had taught him. 6 digits punched in faster than the guards could react. The door opened. Jake and Lyra dove through. Behind them, the guards shouted. Raised weapons. But they could not fire, not with the prisoner and the scientist both inside, not without risking the detention block itself. Lyra ran down the detention corridor. Cell after cell. Most were empty. Then she saw them. Kes and Mara huddled together in a small cell. They looked up as she approached. Their eyes went wide. Mama, the younger one. Mara. She pressed against the force field. "Mama, you came." The jump lasted 3 hours. 3 hours where nobody spoke, where the only sounds were the hum of the engines and the quiet breathing of 2 children who had finally fallen asleep in their seats. Kes still held Mara's hand. Even unconscious, they would not let go of each other. Jake sat in the pilot's chair. His shoulder throbbed. The burn from the plasma rifle had gone deep. He could smell burned flesh and leather where the bolt had hit, but he did not move to treat it. Did not want to wake the girls. They needed rest more than he needed medicine. Lyra stood at the viewport, staring out at the streaking stars. Her reflection in the glass showed a face that had aged years in just days. She had betrayed her entire civilization, had stolen classified information, had helped a prisoner escape. The hierarchy would never forgive this, would never stop hunting her. We should reach human space in another hour. Jake's voice was quiet. Once we cross the border, we will be safe. The hierarchy does not have jurisdiction there. Safe. Lyra laughed. It was a bitter sound. There is no safe anymore, Jake. Do you understand what I have done? What this means? The Hierarchy Council will declare me a traitor. They will put a bounty on my head. On my children's heads. Every species in the coalition will be looking for us. Then they will have to look in human space. And we do not take kindly to people threatening kids. Jake stood slowly. His shoulder protested, but he ignored it. Come here, let me show you something. He pulled up a star chart, pointed to a cluster of systems near the border. See that? That is New Montana, human colony. Population about 2 million. Mix of people from Earth and Mars and the belt stations. They are tough, independent. The kind of folks who do not ask too many questions about where you came from, just what you can contribute. You want us to hide on some frontier world? Lyra shook her head. The hierarchy has spies everywhere. They will find us eventually, maybe. But by then you will be one of them, part of the community, and humans protect their own. Jake pulled up another section of the chart. Or if you want something quieter, there is Armstrong Station, deep space research facility. Always looking for scientists, especially xenobiologists who actually understand alien cultures. I cannot work, cannot contribute. Everything I know is classified hierarchy information. Using it would be another betrayal. Jake looked at her, studied her face. You want to know what I think? I think you have been betraying the wrong people. You spent years studying humans, learning about us, arguing that we should be approached peacefully. And what did the hierarchy do? They took your children hostage, used them to force you into being a kidnapper. That does not justify what I did. No, but it explains it. Jake moved to the medical locker, started pulling out supplies for his shoulder. You made a choice, Lyra. You chose your kids over your government. That is not betrayal. That is being a good mother. The hierarchy will not see it that way. Then the hierarchy can go to hell. Jake winced as he applied antiseptic to the burn. Look, I am not going to pretend I understand your culture or your politics. But I know one thing for damn sure. Any government that threatens children to control their parents is not worth defending. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to help him with the wound. Her hands were steady, professional. Let me do that. You are making it worse. She cleaned the burn properly, applied regenerative gel, wrapped it in clean bandages. Her touch was gentle despite the situation. When she finished, she did not move away. Just stood there, hands resting on his shoulders. Why did you help me? She asked. Really? You could have turned me in the moment I appeared in your cargo bay. Could have collected a reward, been a hero to your people. Instead, you risked everything for a stranger. Jake thought about that. About the real answer. Because it was the right thing to do. Because someone needed help. Because I have got a sister back home with kids of her own, and if someone took them, I would want a stranger to help her too. Humans are strange, Lyra said softly. The hierarchy fears you because you are unpredictable, because you do not follow the rules. But maybe that is not a weakness. Maybe that is your greatest strength. Maybe. Jake looked over at Kes and Mara. They were still asleep, still holding hands. How are they doing? Better than they should be. Lyra moved to check on her daughters. They are resilient, adaptable, more than I gave them credit for. She brushed hair from Kes's face. They asked about you. While we were in the ventilation shafts, asked if you were really a prisoner. If you were dangerous, what did you tell them? That you were the bravest person I had ever met? That you chose to walk into danger to help someone you did not know? That humans are complicated and wonderful and sometimes completely insane? Jake laughed. That about sums us up, yeah? The navigation computer beeped. They were approaching the border. Jake moved back to the pilot station, brought up the sensor display. 2 ships ahead. Human patrol vessels. They would want to scan the Prairie Rose. Ask questions about the hierarchy vessel's sudden flight into human space. Let me do the talking. Jake opened a communication channel. This is the Prairie Rose requesting permission to enter human space. We are carrying refugees. 3 civilians fleeing hierarchy persecution. The response came quickly. Prairie Rose, this is Captain Lewis of the Harrison. State the nature of the persecution. Political asylum case. 1 adult and 2 minors. The adult is a hierarchy xenobiologist who refused orders to torture a human prisoner. They took her children hostage to force compliance. She chose to defect rather than harm an innocent. There was a pause. Then Captain Lewis spoke again. His voice had changed. Gone from professional to personal. She chose her kids over her government, yes, sir. That is exactly what she did. Bring her in. The Harrison will escort you to Armstrong Station. We will process the asylum request there, and Prairie Rose. Tell the lady she made the right choice. We will keep her family safe. Jake closed the channel. Looked at Lyra. Told you. Humans protect their own. I am not human. You helped one. That is close enough. Jake adjusted course to follow the Harrison. Welcome to human space, Lyra. Welcome home. They docked at Armstrong Station 6 hours later. The station was smaller than the Hierarchy Central Command, but it felt warmer. More lived in. People moved through the corridors with purpose, but also with ease. There was laughter. Music. The sounds of life being lived rather than controlled. The asylum process was straightforward. A tired-looking officer took their statements. Recorded the details. When Lyra mentioned her children had been held hostage, the officer's expression hardened. When she explained that Jake had risked his life to help them escape, the officer actually smiled. Ma'am, I am approving your asylum request effective immediately. You and your children are now under the protection of the Human Colonial Alliance. Anyone who tries to harm you will have to go through us first. But the information I have. Lyra started. The classified data about hierarchy technology and defenses. I cannot use it without. It would be espionage. Yeah, we know. The officer leaned back. Here's the thing. We do not want your secrets. We do not want to use your past against your people. What we want is for you to build a new life. Teach, research, contribute. But on your terms. Not because someone is threatening your kids. Lyra felt something break inside her. The tension she had carried for months. The fear, the guilt. It all came flooding out. She cried. Silent tears at first, then deeper sobs. Kes and Mara rushed to her, held her. All three of them crying together. Jake stepped back. Gave them space. Some moments were private. Some moments needed to be just family. The officer handed Lyra a tissue. Take your time. When you are ready, we have quarters set up for you. 3 bedrooms. Small but comfortable. There is a school for the girls. A research facility if you want to work. But no pressure. Take whatever time you need to settle in. They were given quarters on level 5. The rooms were indeed small, but they felt enormous compared to the detention cells. Kes and Mara explored every corner, checked every closet, tested the beds. It was real. They were free. They were safe. Jake stayed long enough to make sure they were settled. Then he headed for the door. Time to get the Prairie Rose checked over. Make sure she was ready for the next run. Jake. Lyra stopped him. I do not know how to thank you. You gave up your safety, your ship, your freedom. For strangers. Hey, I got my ship back. And my freedom. Jake grinned. As for the rest, buy me a drink sometime. We can call it even time. 1 drink will not cover the debt I owe you. Then we better start a tab. Jake left before the moment could get more emotional. He was not good with emotional moments. Give him a broken engine or hostile aliens any day. That he could handle. But gratitude, real honest gratitude. That made him uncomfortable. He was halfway to the docking bay when his communicator buzzed. Message from Captain Lewis. Report to command when you get a chance. We need to talk about what happened out there. Jake sighed. Of course they wanted to talk. He had just participated in breaking someone out of the hierarchy's most secure station. Had helped expose their methods. Had created a diplomatic incident that would probably echo for years. But as he walked through the station, past humans and aliens living side by side, past the sounds of different languages and cultures mixing together, Jake knew he had made the right choice. The hierarchy had tried to use fear and control. Humans offered something different. Choice, freedom, protection. Captain Lewis was not what Jake expected. She was young, maybe 30, with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. She gestured for Jake to sit as he entered her office. The walls were covered with star charts and mission reports. A half-empty coffee cup sat on her desk next to a framed photo of what looked like a family back on Earth. Jake Carter. She did not waste time with pleasantries. You just pulled off one of the craziest things I have heard of this year. Walked into Hierarchy Central Command, pretended to be a prisoner, then broke out with a wanted scientist and her kids. The whole thing sounds like a bad action movie. I had help. Jake stayed standing. Lyra did most of the work. I just caused distractions. Humble. Lewis smiled slightly. I like that. But let us be clear about what you actually did. You created a diplomatic incident. The hierarchy is screaming for your head. They want you extradited. Want Lyra returned. Want the children. They are calling it kidnapping, terrorism, theft of classified materials. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Those kids were hostages. Lyra was being forced to torture prisoners. I would do it again, I know. Lewis leaned back. That is why you are not under arrest. We have reviewed Lyra's testimony. Cross-referenced it with intelligence we already had about hierarchy methods. Everything she said checks out. They did take her children hostage. They did order her to extract information through torture, and when you refused to cooperate, they threatened to kill kids. So what happens now? Now things get interesting. Lewis pulled up a display. Shows a map of the border region. In the last 24 hours, we have received 17 asylum requests from hierarchy citizens. All of them citing similar reasons. Forced compliance. Family members held as leverage. Orders to commit acts they found morally wrong. Your escape started something, Jake. You showed people there was another way. I just helped one person. One person who told her story. Who showed the galaxy what the hierarchy really is behind all their talk of order and civilization. Lewis zoomed in on several systems. We are getting messages from species we have never contacted before, asking about human laws, human rights, whether we really protect refugees the way the stories say. Jake sat down. This was bigger than he had thought. I did not mean to start a movement. Nobody ever does. Lewis closed the display. But here is the reality. The hierarchy is scared. They have ruled through fear and control for 10,000 years. Now humans show up and offer an alternative. Choice. Freedom. Protection for those who need it. That terrifies them more than any weapon we could build. Are they going to attack? Maybe. Eventually. But not yet. Right now they are dealing with internal problems. More defectors. More questions from member species. More people wondering if the old ways are really the best ways. Lewis pulled up another file. We are also hearing about something else. Factions within the hierarchy. Species that want to negotiate with humanity. That see us as potential allies rather than threats. Jake rubbed his face. This was too much, too big. He was just a freight hauler. Just a guy who made a choice to help someone in need. How did it turn into galactic politics? Because that is how change happens, Lewis said quietly. One person makes a choice. Then another. Then another. Before you know it, the whole galaxy shifts. You did not start a war, Jake. You started a conversation. A real one. About what matters. About how civilizations should treat their own people. She stood and moved to the window. Outside the station, Armstrong floated in the void, small and fragile against the vastness of space. My parents came from Earth, refugees from the climate wars. They were running from a government that put control over people, over lives. They found safety in the colonies, found freedom. She looked back at Jake. That is what we offer. Not perfection, not utopia, just the chance to choose your own path, to protect your family without fear. So what do you need from me? Jake asked. I am guessing you did not call me here just to give me a history lesson. I need you to keep being you. Lewis returned to her desk. We are going to have more refugees. More people running from the hierarchy. Some will need transport. Some will need protection. You know the border routes. Know how to move quietly. And after what you just pulled off, you have credibility. People will trust you. You want me to be a people smuggler. I want you to be a lifeline. Lewis met his eyes. We will pay standard rates. Provide escort when possible. But there are going to be people out there who need help. Who need someone willing to take a risk. Someone who gives a damn. Jake thought about Kes and Mara. About how they had looked in that cell. How they had clung to their mother. How they still held hands even in sleep. Yeah, I can do that. Good. Lewis handed him a data chip. These are the contact codes. Use them if you find anyone who needs asylum. We will process them quickly. No red tape. No questions about what they can offer us. Just safety. Jake pocketed the chip. Anything else? Yeah, Lewis smiled. Try not to start any more diplomatic incidents. At least not this week. I have got enough paperwork already. Jake left the command center feeling strange. He had flown freight for years. Moved cargo from system to system. It was honest work. Simple work. But now he was part of something bigger. Something that might actually change things. He returned to the Prairie Rose, ran full diagnostics. The ship had taken damage in the escape. Nothing critical, but enough to need attention. He spent the next 3 days doing repairs, replacing burned circuits, patching hull plates, making her ready for the next run. On the 4th day, Lyra came to visit. She brought the girls. Kes and Mara were dressed in new clothes, human styles. They looked healthier, less scared. Kes carried a data pad. Mara still had her stuffed animal, but she was not clutching it like a lifeline anymore. "We wanted to see you," Lyra said. "The girls have been asking, wondering if you left without saying goodbye." "Not leaving yet." Jake wiped grease from his hands. "Ship needs work. Besides, I got a feeling I will be back this way regular like." Captain Lewis spoke to me. Lyra's voice was careful. "About a job. Teaching xenobiology at the research center. She said I could contribute. Share what I know about hierarchy species without sharing classified military information. Help humans understand the cultures they are meeting." "That sounds perfect." Jake meant it. "You are good at understanding people. Different perspectives. That is valuable." She also said you would be transporting more refugees. That this is not over. "No." Jake looked at the girls. "No, it is not over. Not while there are more kids in cells. More families being used as leverage. Not while the hierarchy thinks fear is how you lead." Kes stepped forward. She held out the data pad. "I wrote something. About what happened. About how you helped us. Mama said I could share it if I wanted. That telling our story might help others." Jake took the data pad. Read the simple words written by a child who had seen too much. Who had been brave when she needed to be. Who had survived and come out stronger. "Can I keep this?" Kes nodded. "Captain Lewis said she would publish it. In the human networks, so people know what the hierarchy really does. What they did to us. You are a brave kid, Kes, you and your sister both." Jake knelt down to her level. "What happened to you was not fair. Was not right. But you made it through. You survived. That takes real strength. Mama says humans believe in second chances." Kes's voice was serious. "That you do not judge people by where they came from, only by what they do now. That is right. Then I want to be human. I want to live where people have choices, where families are protected, where governments do not hurt children." Jake looked at Lyra. She had tears in her eyes. "Kes, you can be whatever you want to be. That is the whole point." After they left, Jake sat in his ship for a long time. He thought about what he had started, about the ripples spreading through the galaxy. One person helping another, that person telling their story, others listening, making choices, taking chances. Change was coming. The hierarchy would fight it, would try to maintain control. But control was an illusion, always had been. You could force compliance for a while, use fear, use threats, but eventually people would choose freedom, choose hope. Jake powered up the Prairie Rose. Time to make a supply run. Maybe check a few border systems. See if anyone needed help. He was just one person. Just a freight hauler with an old ship and a tendency to do stupid things. But sometimes one person was enough. Sometimes one choice changed everything. He set course for the border, for the space between civilizations. That was where people would be running. Where they would need help. Where someone like Jake could make a difference. The stars stretched ahead. Full of possibility, full of danger, full of people who needed someone to give a damn. Jake had spent his life moving cargo. Now he would move something more valuable. Hope, freedom, the chance at a better life. He opened a channel to Captain Lewis. "This is the Prairie Rose. Heading to Sector 7. Will report if I find anyone who needs help. Copy that, Prairie Rose. Safe travels, Jake, and thank you for everything. Just doing what is right, Captain. Just doing what is right." The ship jumped to faster than light speed. Behind Jake was Armstrong Station and safety. Ahead was the unknown. But for the first time in weeks, Jake felt good about where he was going. About what he was doing. About the choice he had made to help a stranger and her children. That choice had changed his life. Had changed their lives. Had started ripples that were spreading. 3 months later, Jake was hauling medical supplies to a colony on the edge of human space when his scanner picked up a distress signal. It was faint, coded in a way that most ships would miss. But Jake had learned to recognize these signals, had learned to hear the desperate calls of people running from the hierarchy. He changed course, followed the signal to a small asteroid field. There, floating among the rocks, was a battered escape pod. Hierarchy design, old model. Probably pulled from some decommissioned ship and repurposed. The life support was failing. Whoever was inside did not have much time. Jake maneuvered the Prairie Rose close, extended the docking clamp, pulled the pod into his cargo bay. When he opened it, he found a family. A Valkyrie couple and their 3 children. The adults were unconscious. The children were huddled together, scared, hungry, but alive. "It is okay." Jake kept his voice gentle. "You are safe now. You are in human space." The oldest child spoke. Her translator stuttered with interference. "They were going to take us, separate us, use us to control our parents. We ran, stole the pod, but it was damaged." Jake carried the unconscious adults to his medical bay. The children followed, holding hands. Always holding hands. He stabilized the parents, made sure the kids had food and water. Then he sent the coded message to Captain Lewis. 5 more refugees. Family of 5. Need processing. The response came within minutes. Bring them to Armstrong. We are ready. It was the 9th family Jake had rescued. Each one similar. Each one running from control, from fear, from a government that used families as weapons. The hierarchy was bleeding citizens, not in massive numbers but steadily, constantly. People were choosing freedom even when it meant losing everything else. The time they reached Armstrong, the Valkyrie parents were conscious, scared, grateful, confused. Jake had seen that look before, the look of people who had burned every bridge behind them, who had no idea what came next. Captain Lewis met them at the docking bay. She had a team now, people dedicated to processing refugees, to helping them settle in, to protecting them from hierarchy retaliation. It had become organized, systematic, but still personal, still focused on individual lives rather than statistics. Jake Carter. Lewis smiled when she saw him. "You are getting good at this. Just point me at people who need help." Jake, unload. Jake stood at the entrance to the detention block. Behind him, Lyra held her children. Both girls were crying, silent tears that spoke of fear and relief and overwhelming emotion. Ahead, the 2 guards were calling for backup. Their voices crackled over the station's emergency channels. "Prisoner escape in progress. Detention block 7. Send reinforcements. How much time do we have?" Lyra's voice was steady despite the tears on her face. "Maybe 5 minutes before they lock down this whole sector." Jake scanned the corridor. "Less if someone decides to just seal us in and wait us out." Kess, the older daughter, looked up at Jake. Her eyes were large and dark like her mother's. "Are you the human? The one Mama captured? That is me." Jake gave her a small smile. "Your mom is real brave, coming all the way to get me so she could save you too. You are going to help us escape." It was not a question. Kess had her mother's intelligence. She could read the situation. "That is the plan." Jake checked his restraints. Lyra had given him the light ones again, the ones he could break if needed, but better not to show that card unless necessary. Right now they needed to move fast and quiet. "Can you both run?" Both girls nodded. Mara clutched a small stuffed animal, something that looked like a cross between a cat and a bird. It was worn and patched, clearly well loved. "Stay close to your mom." Jake moved toward the door. "When I say run, you run. Do not stop. Do not look back." Understand. They understood. Children in danger learned fast. Jake had seen it before. Kids who could barely tie their shoes suddenly moving with purpose when their lives depended on it. He peered around the corner. The 2 guards had taken cover behind equipment stations. They had weapons raised. Behind them, Jake could hear more footsteps. The reinforcements were coming. "Lyra, I need you to override the lights in this section. Can you do that from here?" She was already at a wall panel. Her fingers flew over the controls. "Give me 30 seconds. We do not have 30 seconds. Jake could see shadows moving at the far end of the corridor. Multiple guards, armed and armored. "Then I work faster." Lyra's voice was tight with concentration. Kess tugged at Jake's jacket. "The ventilation shafts. We could use those. Mara and I explored them when we were first brought here, before they locked us in the cell." Jake looked down at her. "Smart kid. Can you show me where they are?" Kess pointed to a grate in the wall. "Low down, just barely large enough for a person to squeeze through." "There. It connects to the main ventilation system." We could hear everything through the walls. All the guards talking, all the alarms too small for me, Jake calculated quickly. "But maybe big enough for you 3. Lyra, can you fit through there?" "Barely, but what about you? I will be the distraction." Jake smiled. "Not the first time I played bait. You get the girls into those vents. Follow them to the docking bay. Level 3. Section 9. The Prairie Rose is in berth 42. You remember the access codes I taught you, I remember. But Jake, you cannot hold off an entire security force alone, not planning to. Just planning to be interesting enough that they focus on me instead of you. Jake squeezed her shoulder. Get your girls to safety. That is what matters. The lights went out. Lyra had done it. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later. Red glow that turned the corridor into something from a nightmare. Perfect go. Jake pushed Lyra toward the vent. Now, move. Lyra pulled the grate off. It came away easily. Too easily. Someone had loosened it before. Probably Kess during her exploration. The girl really was smart. Kess went first. Scrambling into the narrow space with practiced ease, Mara followed, clutching her stuffed animal. Lyra hesitated, looked back at Jake. If you die, I will never forgive you, then I better not die. Jake was already moving toward the guards. Taking the attention with him, he stepped into the corridor with his hands raised. The restraints dangled from his wrists. He had not broken them yet. Better to look helpless. The guards saw him immediately. Weapons tracked him. Multiple targeting lasers painted red dots across his chest. Easy now. Jake kept his voice calm. I am not armed. Just a freight hauler who got in over his head. You want me? The scientist does not matter. Let her go and I will come quietly. Where is she? The lead guard moved forward. Where are the children? Already gone. Jake lied smoothly. Lyra used some kind of emergency transport. Beam them out or something. Real fancy technology. I do not understand it. But she made a deal with me. I hold you off and she gets her kids to safety. The guards did not believe him. They moved forward cautiously, checking the detention block, looking for Lyra and the children. Jake needed to give them more time. Needed to keep their attention. He ran. Not away from them, but sideways. Down a connecting corridor. The guards shouted and followed. Just like he knew they would. They could not let the human prisoner escape. That would be a disaster for the hierarchy. Proof that humans were as dangerous as they feared. Jake led them on a chase through the station. He knew they would catch him eventually. That was fine. He just needed to lead them away from the ventilation system. Away from Lyra and the girls. Every minute he bought them was another minute closer to the docking bay. He turned corners. Ducked through doors. The station layout Lyra had shown him was burned into his memory. He knew where he was going. The guards did not. They were just reacting, chasing, exactly what he wanted. Finally, he hit a dead end, a storage bay with only one entrance. The guards poured in behind him. Weapons raised. Nowhere for Jake to run now, down on the ground. The lead guard's voice was sharp. Now, hands behind your head. Jake complied slowly. He knelt, put his hands behind his head. Let them think they had won. One guard moved forward with heavy restraints. Real ones this time. The kind Jake could not break, but he did not need to break them. Because at that moment, every alarm in the station changed pitch. The fire suppression alert cut off. In its place came a different sound. Hull breach warning. Section 9. Level 3. The docking bay. The guards froze. Looked at each other. That was where the human's ship was. That was where Lyra would go. They ran. All of them. Leaving Jake in the storage bay with one guard. Young, inexperienced. Probably his first real emergency. Jake moved. He snapped the light restraints. Broke them like plastic. The guard's eyes went wide. Went for his weapon. Jake was faster. He closed the distance. One hand clamped over the guard's weapon. The other delivered a sharp blow to the nerve cluster Lyra had shown him on the hierarchy physiology charts. The guard dropped. Not dead, just unconscious. Jake took his weapon. A plasma rifle. Simple design. Point and shoot. He could work with that, then he ran. Toward the docking bay. Toward his ship. Toward Lyra and her children. The route took him through 3 sections, all in lockdown. But Jake had the guard's access codes now. The biometric scanner and the weapon. He pressed it against each door panel. Override, 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 level 3. Section 9. The docking bay was chaos. Ships were attempting emergency launches. The hull breach warning had triggered evacuation protocols. But there was no actual breach. It was another false alarm. More confusion. More chaos, smart girl, Jake thought. Lyra had triggered it from inside the bay. Gave them cover for the escape. He spotted the Prairie Rose across the bay. The cargo ramp was down. He could see movement inside. Lyra and the girls. They had made it, but between Jake and his ship were 20 guards. They had the ramp surrounded, weapons drawn, waiting. Jake took cover behind a cargo container, checked the plasma rifle. Full charge. Maybe 30 shots. Not great odds, but he had faced worse. He fired. Not at the guards, but at the power conduits above them. The plasma bolt hit dead center. Sparks exploded. Lights flickered. The guards scattered, seeking cover, trying to locate the shooter. Jake ran, low and fast. He fired twice more, covering shots, not trying to hit anyone, just keeping heads down. The guards returned fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past him. One clipped his shoulder, burned through his jacket. The pain was sharp and immediate, but Jake kept moving. He reached the ramp. Scrambled up. Lyra was at the top. She pulled him inside. Hit the door control. The ramp closed as more plasma fire hammered against it. Are you hurt? Lyra's hands were already checking his shoulder. The burn was bad, but not critical. I will live. Jake moved toward the cockpit. Get the girls strapped in. This is going to be rough. Kes and Mara were already in the jump seats, holding hands. Scared but trusting, Jake slid into the pilot's chair. His hands moved over familiar controls. Engine startup. Shield activation. Weapons online. Not that the Prairie Rose had much in the way of weapons. A few point defense guns, meant for clearing debris, not fighting warships. Tower control was screaming at him, demanding he power down, return to dock. He ignored them, focused on flying. The Prairie Rose lifted off, smooth despite the chaos. She was a good ship. Had never let him down. They cleared the docking bay, moved into open space. Around them, the Hierarchy defense fleet was mobilizing, warships turning toward them, weapons locking on. The Prairie Rose was fast, but she was not a fighter. Could not win against military vessels. Jake did not try to fight. He ran, pushed the engines to maximum. The ship shuddered, strained. Behind them, plasma fire lit up the void. The defense fleet was shooting, trying to disable them, capture them, bring them back. Lyra was at the navigation station, entering coordinates. Her face was pale but determined. Jump point in 40 seconds. Can you keep us alive that long?